I have a problem. I can't say no. And this is a problem because I am a single student at BYU, Idaho in Rexburg, attending school with a lot of other single students who are looking for relationships. And to set the scene a little bit more, a couple months ago, a guy came up to me while I was studying in the hallway. I didn't know who he was, started talking to me, got my number, set up a time to go to lunch the next week. By the time the next week had come, the appointed lunch date was upon me, and I'd already forgotten what he looked like. And I was really, really nervous about it, but I met him at the place that we were supposed to meet in the restaurant, and he had his whole sack lunch set up at the table where he led me to, and was wondering why I didn't bring food. I was left very confused, and I went, bought my own lunch, and came back to the table. I didn't know how to handle this very well, and at the time I was very kind of shocked, but I decided I would make the best of it. I was going to smile, I was going to move on, and I was going to get to know him, and it was going to be great. But eventually, as the conversation progressed, he brought up two things that started to alarm me. He mentioned a future relationship, and then he brought up the word marriage. And I was scared. I was not ready for that, and I felt very much like the tortoise in the story, The Tortoise and the Hare. I felt like I was taking my time, pacing myself in this dating and relationship world, and I felt like he was this rabbit that was coming up on me and running circles around me, wanting to run all the way to the finish line. This was way too fast for me, and I was not prepared for that. But it got me thinking about the way relationships work and the natural course of relationships. And so I made this model that shows the natural course of relationships. So we kind of start off, we meet people and we form an acquaintance with them, and then we eventually build a friendship with them. And once we're friends, we become really good friends and we hang out with them all the time, share secrets, and then eventually we decide some people are good enough for the relationship category. And we decide that they're going to become our boyfriend or a girlfriend, and then in the ultimate case of commitment, we get married. This was the situation that he'd introduced to me, and I was very confused. He wanted to go from acquaintances to a relationship at a very fast pace that I wasn't ready for, skipping a whole bunch of steps that were in between. And this left me wondering why. This is a popular situation. If you talk to some people on campus, I'm sure many of you in the audience even have stories of similar situations. People are very interested in relationships around here. There must be something in the air. But people are looking for this source of connection, and that's an important part of who we are. We long to be with people. And I guess that's amplified here because people are encouraged to get married and find relationships. Even some people have reported cases of having different people tell them and set them up on dates or whatever it may be. But people are looking for any connection that they can get. A smile, a nod from a pretty girl, or a cute boy who walks by you and you try to find a way to strike up conversation with them. But I felt like this was expressed in this meme. It says, she asked if she could borrow my pencil, so I guess you could say it's getting pretty serious. But the situation describes a lot of it, and people are interested in looking for these small connections, and they put their hearts on the line in this one invitation, and sometimes they're very disappointed with the answer, and it can be crushing when people say no. So to prevent this feeling of putting your feelings out there and everything, I wanted to contrast this with the way that relationships are known to work. How do we know if these fast relationships are actually working out? That's by looking at the end result. And so I looked at some of the marriage and divorce rates to see if these marriages that happen super fast are actually working, and I found some interesting statistics. So if I asked you which state had the highest divorce rate in 2016, what would you say? Shout out some answers. Utah. I love it. I was thinking like California or New York. Kind of similar to some of the answers that you shouted out, but even I jumped to like Nevada because they have Las Vegas. People go there and get married all the time and make dumb decisions, so they probably want to end those decisions later. But surprisingly, the answer was Idaho. Idaho had the highest divorce rate. And if I asked you which county contributed the most to it, Madison County was one of the highest ones. And Madison County only has 2 cities in it. That's Rexburg and Sugar City. And that's very shocking, which means that most of these divorces are coming from the university where 18,000 students are gathered at any given time on a semester. That's scary. That's such a small area, and one of the most interesting lines from the report put out by the state of Idaho was that just like the marriage rate in Idaho is really high, the divorce rate is just as high. So if just as many people are getting married as are getting divorced, then are these relationships really working? It made me think long about it, and I continued to search and research statistics. And the surprising trend is that most people under the age of 45 in surrounding states, their divorce rates are declining. And it's not because they found a magical answer, it's because most of them are waiting. They're waiting until they're stable, until they've completed their education, until they've got a job. They're taking it slow, and maybe they're moving in with each other, which I'm not supporting, but they're choosing those paths that make relationships be pushed off until later in life. And so all of us are searching for this connection, for this lifelong love. We all want to grow old together. We want to build a connection that lasts a lifetime. And so as my continued studies progressed even further, I wanted to find out what really makes relationships last the longest. And I found that very key thing that was missing was friendship. Relationships that last a long time involve a high amount of trust, of support and love for each other. And over time, when those feelings of intense attraction, that instant lust and desire to be around them all the time, when those feelings go away, ultimately what's left behind is companionship. The years of knowing each other, of knowing each other's thoughts and feelings and supporting each other, and all the decisions that have made together really strengthen that bond. So sometimes people feel like they've fallen out of love after time when those feelings go away, but we all want to find that lasting connection. And so what's the solution to this problem of divorces and everything else that's involved with it? I'm going to suggest a very controversial topic that many of you might have mixed feelings about: the friend zone. Many of you know people who have been friend zoned, or maybe you've even done the friend zoning yourself. Whatever the situation may be, or whatever scenario it is, the friend zone is what I feel was missing in that first scenario that I showed you from the BYU Idaho, comparing myself to that date. So the friend zone is actually very much involved in our dating and our relationships. We form an acquaintance, and those 2 steps that guy was trying to skip in the beginning with me are very pivotal in creating a lasting relationship. The last thing any of us wants is for our relationships to dissolve. And when we build that trust, that support for each other, where we can share each other's thoughts and feelings and really build those things, that's what builds a lasting relationship for a lifetime. So many people, when they hear the word friend zone, or when they say let's just be friends, or all those popular things that nobody wants to hear when they really, really like someone, they turn away and try to find someone else who's ready to move on to that relationship. This little boy says, don't cry when you can't find a good guy. He's moving on. He's going to find someone else who's ready to move at that speed. But we all move at different speeds and different paces, and sometimes the relationships that take the longest to build and maybe don't produce the most instant results like we want them to are the ones that are the most meaningful to us and last the longest. Ultimately, we will all cross the finish line. Both the tortoise and the hare crossed the finish line, even though the tortoise ended up making it first because the hare was running around in circles and making all those crazy decisions. But we will all make it there. We will all find a lasting connection in a relationship. So my question to you is it bad to take our relationships slow? Thank you.